Who answers a call that wasn't meant for them at 2 a.m. in the middle of a freezing night? Melinda Weiss, a nurse running on caffeine and compassion, barely recognized the number. But something in the voice, panicked, pleading, made her grab her coat anyway. She expected a mistake, maybe even a prank. Instead, she stepped into a penthouse she'd never afford to find a powerful CEO kneeling beside his feverish son. One misdialed number. One impulsive decision. What happened next would unravel everything they thought they knew about control, timing, and the people we're meant to find. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. Melinda's phone buzzed so violently it nearly slipped off the break room table. She jolted awake, heart pounding, the lukewarm coffee in her hand sloshing onto her scrubs. 2:07 a.m. She'd only just clocked out after a double shift and her ride home was running late. She didn't recognize the number, just a string of digits and one word in the preview, please. She almost declined it. Almost. But something about the timing, about the way her stomach flipped, made her thumb hover, then swipe. Hello? A man's voice, shaky but firm. Is this Dr. Jennings? No, this is Melinda Weiss. A pause. Breathing. Then a low, desperate exhale. I'm sorry. I must have misdialed. My son, he's burning up. I can't wake him up properly. I tried the nurse line, but it's all automated and I didn't know who else to it. Where are you? She asked, standing already, grabbing her bag with one hand, keys with the other. Tower West. Penthouse. Please, he's 5. His name is Teddy. I think I messed up. I'm on my way. She didn't know what possessed her to say it. She wasn't on call. She didn't even know who this man was. But something in his voice had cut through her exhaustion like glass. He wasn't just scared, he was alone. 22 minutes later, Melinda was pressing the buzzer at a sleek glass building she usually passed on her bus ride. The doorman gave her a look but let her up without questions. Penthouse floor. Private elevator. The carpet under her sneakers cost more than her rent. When the doors opened, she stepped into silence and then chaos. A man in a half-buttoned dress shirt paced barefoot in the living room, and on the oversized couch, a small boy lay curled in blankets, flushed and restless. You're not a doctor, the man said immediately, frowning. No. I'm a nurse. You called me by mistake. He stared. And you came. You said your son needed help. He looked at her like he couldn't quite process what kind of person just did that. But she was already moving, kneeling beside the boy. Ted, she said softly. The boy blinked, but his eyes were glassy. His skin radiated heat. She touched his forehead, then his wrist. Do you have a thermometer? The man disappeared for a moment, returned with a fancy digital one she barely knew how to use. 104.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Melinda's tone changed. We need to cool him down. Now. Do you have Tylenol? The man, Christian, he'd said on the phone, nodded numbly and vanished again. 10 minutes later, Teddy was in cooler pajamas, sips of water on his lips, and Melinda was sitting with him while Christian hovered behind her like a storm cloud about to break. Should I call 911? He asked finally. Not yet. Let's see if his fever starts to drop. He's responsive now. Talking a bit. Christian nodded, but his hands wouldn't stop fidgeting. She caught the tremor in his fingers when he handed her the medicine bottle. You're his dad? She asked quietly. Yes. Where's his mother? She died. 2 years ago. She looked up. He wasn't looking for pity, just stating a fact he'd had to repeat too often. I'm sorry, she said. He nodded once. They sat like that for another 15 minutes. Teddy's breathing evened out. His lashes fluttered. He murmured something about dinosaurs and orange juice. Melinda stood, stretching her legs. He's okay. You did the right thing calling someone. Christian didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. She was still in her scrubs, hair tied in a tired knot. Shoes soaked from the slush outside. And yet she was the calmest thing in the room. I thought I had control over everything, he said finally. Until 5 minutes ago, my entire night was scheduled in 15-minute blocks. Now, I feel like I'm learning to breathe again. Melinda didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Welcome to parenting. That made him laugh, brief, surprised, genuine. Can I pay you? He asked. No. Are you sure? I'm sure. She moved to the door, but his voice stopped her. Wait, what's your name again? She turned. Melinda Weiss. I'm Christian Bakel. I figured that out from the elevator, she said, half smiling. You're sort of everywhere. He looked sheepish for someone who probably ran empires. Yeah. Sorry about that. She shook her head. Just take care of him. That's all that matters. Then she stepped back into the elevator, into the night, into the world that never quite touched places like this. Christian stood at the window long after she was gone, watching the city below, the skyline he'd mastered, wondering how someone with nothing could walk in and give him everything he didn't know he needed. And on the couch, Teddy whispered in his sleep, "Is she an angel?" Christian didn't answer, but part of him wasn't sure she wasn't. Christian didn't expect to see her again. That night had felt like a crack in time, something temporary and out of place, a stranger appearing when he needed help, then disappearing just as quietly. But the next morning, while spooning cold cereal into Teddy's bowl and watching cartoons flicker across the screen, he found himself staring at the front door. Listening. Hoping. She didn't come. Of course she didn't. Why would she? But something in him stayed alert all day. Distracted. He rescheduled 2 meetings. Snapped at his executive assistant. Stared at his phone like it might ring again with her voice with something. It didn't. 3 days passed. Teddy's fever broke the next evening. Christian stayed up all night just to make sure it didn't spike again. And when it didn't, he sat in silence in his office, surrounded by reports and strategy briefs, unable to think about anything except the way Melinda had touched his son's forehead like it mattered more than money. He didn't know why he looked her up. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe something deeper. He called every urgent care within 10 miles. Then every hospital. None had her listed. It wasn't until the 5th call that a night shift nurse finally sighed and said, "Melinda Weiss?" Yeah, she floats between departments. NICU, ER, sometimes oncology. She's hard to pin down. Can you transfer me? No. He hung up, frustrated. That should have been the end of it. But on Saturday morning, he walked into the children's wing of a hospital he'd never set foot in, wearing jeans, not a suit, and holding a small bouquet of supermarket flowers he wasn't sure how to explain. He didn't have a plan. Until he saw her. Across the lobby. Leaning against the counter in pink scrubs, talking to a tired intern and sipping black coffee like it was her lifeline. His chest tightened. He walked toward her slowly, unsure of what to say. Unsure if this was a mistake. She looked up, paused, and blinked. Christian. Her voice wasn't surprised, just puzzled, like someone bumping into a dream that had snuck into daylight. Hi, he said, awkwardly holding the flowers. I didn't know what else to bring. She took them with careful hands. They're actually not bad. He laughed. I aim for decent. She tilted her head. Is Teddy okay? Much better, he said. He asked if you were an angel. That made her smile. A tired, soft curve of lips. He's sweet. You helped more than you know. I'm a nurse. That's what we do. No, he said, stepping closer, you showed up. You weren't even supposed to be there. Melinda's eyes darkened slightly. Why are you here, Christian? He swallowed. I wanted to thank you. You already did. No. I mean properly. A silence stretched between them, long enough for her pager to buzz. She glanced at it, then looked back up at him. I have 12 minutes before I'm supposed to be somewhere else. Can I take those 12? She hesitated, then nodded. They sat on a bench near the window, hospital noise buzzing behind them. He told her about the night after she left, about watching Teddy breathe, about the terrifying weight of parenting without Annette. She listened. Not the way most people did, waiting for their turn to speak, but truly listening, like she was trying to understand a language no one else had cared to learn. He didn't talk like this. Not to his board. Not to his therapist. Not to anyone. But something about her stripped everything down. I don't know how to be enough, he said finally. Not for him. Not without help. Melinda stared out the window. I used to feel like that every day. Especially after my dad died. You took care of him? Until the end. I'm sorry. She shrugged. He was proud of me. Even when I wasn't proud of myself. Christian looked at her like she was a blueprint he hadn't known he needed to study. What would you do if someone offered to make things easier for you? I'd ask why. What if the answer was simple? They just wanted to be near you. She didn't blink. Then I'd ask what they want in return. He didn't have an answer. She stood then, brushing imaginary dust from her scrubs. I don't do rich saviors, Christian. I don't need a knight. I'm not trying to be one. She looked at him, not unkind, but guarded. Then just be real. He stood too. I don't know how. Not yet. But I'd like to try. She didn't reply. Just handed him one of the flowers from the bouquet. For Teddy, she said, and walked away. Christian stared at that single flower like it was a challenge. A promise. A chance. He didn't know what would happen next. But he knew 12 minutes with Melinda Weiss had made him want more. Christian didn't expect her to text back. He didn't even expect her to remember his number. But 3 days after their bench conversation, a message popped up at 6:42 a.m. just as he was pouring cereal into a chipped Spider-Man bowl. You left your flower wrapper on the bench. Thought you should know you're not perfect. He smiled more than he meant to. Never claimed to be. But thanks for the update. That was the beginning. Not of something huge or cinematic, but of something steady. They didn't exchange long messages. Just quiet ones. A joke. A shared sunrise. A question about flu symptoms. A photo of Teddy painting a crooked rainbow. Then another of Melinda's hand holding a paper cup with "You owe me coffee" written in Sharpie across the lid. He started calling late at night. She always picked up on the second ring. It felt dangerous, not like falling, but like breathing for the first time in too long. Then came the Sunday she agreed to visit. He didn't tell Teddy ahead of time. Just said someone special's coming. Teddy sat on the couch, one sock missing, markers scattered across the coffee table. He was humming to himself when the doorbell rang, and then he froze. Christian opened the door. Melinda stood there in a faded gray sweater, jeans, and a messy braid that made her look like she belonged in every version of home he'd forgotten existed. Hey, she said, then looked down. Hi, Teddy. The boy stared at her. And then, without a word, raced down the hallway and slammed his bedroom door. Melinda blinked. Okay, that went well. Christian winced. He's 5. His version of emotional regulation is locking himself away with stuffed dinosaurs. I get it, she said, stepping inside. Want me to pretend that didn't happen? Very much. Teddy didn't come out for 20 minutes. When he finally did, he was wearing a superhero cape and clutching a crayon drawing like a shield. He walked straight to Melinda and handed her the paper. This is a picture of you. She looked down. The stick figure had long red lines for hair and big hands holding a heart. I like it, she said. But my hands aren't that big. He shrugged. They're when you fix stuff. Christian watched the exchange with something tight in his chest. He made lunch. She stayed. Teddy showed her his toy helicopter that didn't fly, and she listened like it was a world summit. Christian watched from the kitchen, pretending to read emails, but mostly just memorizing the way she tucked her legs under her on the couch and tilted her head when Teddy got excited. When she left, it was with a "see you soon" and a pink gummy bear Teddy had insisted she take. That night, he couldn't sleep. Neither could she. They texted until sunrise. It took 2 more visits before Melinda let herself stay past 9 p.m. For before Christian reached for her hand and she didn't pull away. 6 before Teddy asked if they were a family now. Melinda froze when he said it. Christian did too. I just meant, Teddy added, like the kind in books. where people eat pancakes together and say goodnight even when they're tired. Melinda nodded. We can be that kind. She didn't know if she meant it, but she wanted to. She hadn't let anyone in since her father died. Since the boyfriend who'd promised forever left a pile of bills and a note that said, "I'm not built for this." Since every time someone said, "You're amazing," it was followed by, "But I can't." And now here was Christian, a man who didn't flinch at chaos, who didn't panic when she forgot to call, who looked at her like she was something solid, not something that needed to be saved. It scared her, but not as much as the moment the outside world noticed. It started with a blurry photo. They were coming out of a grocery store. Christian was holding a bag in one hand and Teddy in the other. Melinda walked beside them, smiling at something the boy had said. A stranger took the picture, posted it with a hashtag and no context. Then came the speculation. Tabloids, gossip sites, tech blogs hungry for something personal to pin on a man known for being unshakable. Who's the nurse in Christian Bakel's life? How our CEO plays house with mystery woman and child. Melinda saw it on her lunch break. Her hands shook so badly she dropped her coffee. She didn't answer Christian's call that day, or that night, or the one after that. When he finally showed up at her door, his eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "I didn't know. Didn't know someone was following us? Didn't know your life comes with cameras and headlines and rumors I'm not built for?" He stepped forward. "Melinda." "No," she said. "You don't get to say my name like it changes the fact that this," she held up her phone, "is not something I consented to." Teddy peeked out from behind the couch. She hadn't even noticed he was there. Christian's voice dropped. "I'll fix it." "No," she whispered. Don't fix me. Don't fix this. Just let me breathe." He didn't know how. She didn't know if she could. And Teddy, he just wanted pancakes. Melinda didn't sleep that night. She tried. She turned off her phone. She closed the blinds. She poured herself tea and let it go cold on the counter. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw headlines. Her face on a screen. Teddy's name in a thread. People she'd never met speculating about her body, her income, her motives. By morning, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She called the hospital and asked for time off. "Just a few days," she said. "Just until the noise died down." But it didn't. 2 gossip sites ran her name by noon. One found a 10-year-old photo from her nursing graduation. Another interviewed a neighbor from her old building who said she always seemed tired and kept to herself. Christian called. Again. And again. She didn't pick up. Teddy sent her a drawing, 3 smiling stick figures and a dog with wings. She stared at it for 20 minutes and cried into a dish towel. By the 3rd day, the headlines were worse. Is this the woman who tamed Christian Bakel? Private nurse, public distraction? Single dad CEO's hidden romance revealed. And then came the knock. Not Christian. A man in a dark suit. Calm voice. Polite smile. A clipboard in one hand and a government badge in the other. "We received a report," he said. "An anonymous concern about the welfare of a minor in a high-profile household." She froze. "You mean Teddy?" "I'm not at liberty to confirm names," he said, "but we do need to follow up." She answered his questions. Gave clinical, precise responses. Told him she wasn't living with anyone. That she wasn't employed by Mr. Bakel. That she had no legal ties to the child. He left without comment. She locked the door and sat on the floor for an hour. When Christian arrived, it was near dusk. He looked exhausted. His coat was damp from rain. His voice was quieter than usual. "You should have told me," she said before he even spoke. "I just found out this morning." Her shoulders sank. "They came to my door, Christian. Not yours. Mine. I've been trying to get it sealed. Scrubbed. Managed." "Managed," she echoed. "You don't manage people, Christian. You live with them. Or you don't." He stepped closer. "You think I don't know that? Do you? I know I haven't been enough. I know I can't shield you from the world I live in. But I'm not trying to drag you into it, I'm trying to make room in it. She didn't answer, just rubbed her eyes with the heel of her palm. And then came the soft voice behind them. Is she leaving? Teddy. He stood in the hallway, barefoot, holding a drawing in one hand and his favorite stuffed seal in the other. He looked smaller than usual, quieter. Melinda crouched. Hey, buddy. He walked to her slowly and handed her the paper. This one showed a big house and 3 people. One had red hair. One had a blue tie. One had tiny shoes. I can draw a new one, he said, if I need to. Her heart cracked so hard she thought it might echo. You don't, she whispered. It's perfect. Christian watched them, silent. Later that night, she packed a small bag. Just essentials. She didn't tell Christian she was leaving. She just kissed Teddy's forehead and whispered, see you soon, okay? He nodded. But she didn't know when soon would be. Outside, the sky was dark and the rain didn't let up. She walked to the train station alone, hair soaking, bag bumping against her knee, and tried to convince herself that distance was protection. That space was safety. That what they'd built had been a beautiful mistake. And back in the penthouse, Christian sat in Teddy's room staring at a paper seal colored in blue crayon, trying to remember how it had felt to breathe before she walked in. 3 days passed. Melinda didn't call. Christian didn't text. Neither of them knew how to begin again without breaking something delicate. The tabloids had moved on to another scandal. Some actress, some yacht, some fight outside a nightclub. But the damage had already been done. Her name still autofilled in searches. Her photo still lingered on forums she didn't visit. She still jumped at camera clicks and checked over her shoulder twice at bus stops. She kept her head down, took shifts in other hospitals, told herself she'd been right to walk away. Then came the envelope. No name, no stamp, just left at the front desk where she rented a room above a bakery. Inside, a napkin, folded once, still faintly stained with coffee, scrawled in messy ink. I still owe you a cup. I'll wait, however long it takes. No signature, but she didn't need one. That night, she sat by the window of her tiny studio, feet curled under her, hands around a chipped mug, thinking about the way Teddy said her name. The way Christian looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. The way the world had gone too loud and how even then his silence had felt like shelter. She didn't reply. Not yet. But the napkin stayed on the counter. And in the morning she smiled at it. Teddy asked about her every night. Not directly. Just in little ways. Do angels have red hair? Can we send drawings through the mail? Is she still real if I close my eyes and see her? Christian didn't have answers. But he kept Teddy close. Painted birdhouses with him. Burned grilled cheese sandwiches on purpose because it made the boy laugh. He tried to become what Melinda had once told him he wasn't, real. And still, every time he passed that diner on 8th and Mercer, the one she once pointed at and said, I like the neon but not the food, he looked inside. Hoping. Wishing. Then one morning he saw it. A napkin. Taped to the window. For words. We're still right here. He didn't hesitate. He left the car running, crossed the street, hands shaking like a man about to confess something he didn't know how to name. Inside the diner, the booth was empty. But she'd been there. The server said she came alone. Sat with tea. Asked for the corner booth. Stayed 20 minutes and left quietly. She seemed, the woman searched for a word. Hopeful. He nodded. Yeah, that sounds like her. That night, someone knocked at Melinda's door. Just once. Then a pause. Then again. That rhythm. That quiet. She didn't check the peephole. Just opened it. Christian stood there. No coat. No umbrella. Just wet hair, red eyes, and the look of a man who'd finally run out of ways to pretend. I saw the napkin, he said. She swallowed. Good. He stepped closer, slowly. I'm not here to fix anything. I'm not asking you to. His voice broke slightly. I miss the sound of your keys on my counter. The way you roll your eyes when you care. The way Teddy says your name like it's made of magic. Melinda's throat tightened. Christian, I know I can't promise quiet. I can't promise protection. But I can promise I'll stand in the storm with you. Every damn time. She blinked fast. You don't have to say all the right things. I'm not. I'm just saying real ones. Then, behind her, a shuffle. Teddy, in socks and pajamas, holding a wrinkled blanket and a marker. Is he staying this time? Melinda looked at Christian, then back at Teddy, then stepped aside. Christian didn't move like a hero. He didn't lift her or kiss her or speak a grand line from a script. He just walked in slowly, kneeled to Teddy's height, and said, only if I'm allowed. Teddy nodded. Okay, but next time bring snacks. They laughed quietly, carefully. That night, they didn't talk about the headlines, or the past, or the what-ifs that still whispered behind their ribs. They sat on the floor with a coloring book between them. Teddy drew a house with 3 windows and a giant sun. Melinda drew a tree. Christian drew a cup of coffee and handed her the crayon. You can finish it, he said. She did. And that was how it started again. Not with fireworks. Not with a perfect ending. But with crayons, tea, and a boy who believed in family made by choice, not blood. And a man who showed up. And a woman who, for the first time in years, let herself stay.